Right, welcome to Rambling Achieved. I've seen this as like a topic and style of video, as well as being posted up on stuff like Twitter, where people do like Mount Rushmore of games and stuff like that, or movies. Um, I kind of wanted to do that, but do it slightly different, because it's a little bit boring. I think a lot of people, if you've been here long enough and you've heard me ramble and ramble, you kind of know what games that I like. So what I wanted to actually do instead of and do a little bit of a shake up was people who are behind the scenes. So when you hear about, like we've got running in the background here with Mass Effect, who made Mass Effect click and stuff like that. And that's what we're going to be doing. I'm just going to be picking 4 names of people who I personally feel like have really heavily influenced me falling in love with gaming unlike anything else. Um, so obviously there's tons of people who have done that influence. So it's going to be difficult narrowing it down to 4. But these 4, when I was flicking through names and games and stuff like that, it definitely felt right. And as you can see, running in the background is Mass Effect. So kicking it off is going to be Casey Hudson, um, who directed Knights of the Old Republic back in the day, and then set off and did Mass Effect spawning from his mind and stuff like that. And he did the entire trilogy. So he did Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 as a director. And I would say I played games from a very, very young age, but none of them captivated me until I put in Mass Effect 1 for the first time. And I remember just being the way I like to describe it is I was not I'm not old enough to have been on that Star Wars hype train when it very first came out. So when people were like queuing up in theaters and stuff like that, and you had that feeling that this is something, a brand new greatness that's going to be hitting. And I think like when I played Mass Effect, that was my sci-fi version of that. Seeing what they were doing, and that was my version of Star Wars. Seeing it for the first time, getting my hands onto it, and just being absolutely blown away that you were getting something that felt so brand new in a sci-fi setting that wasn't Star Wars. Because I love Star Wars. I've never really dipped into Star Trek, so I can't really speak on that. But like Star Wars, I've always been a fan of. But this just is crazy, just what they were able to pull off. So yeah, Casey Hudson will be that first head on the quote unquote Mount Rushmore. He's also, I wanted to shout out, I think it was unveiled in the last year's Game Awards. He's working on another Star Wars project, Star Wars Fate of the Old Republic, and I just really hope that he gets to see that project through to the end, because there's so much untapped magic of like, you can fill the void that has been left by not having a Mass Effect game for so long, and then the likes of Dragon Age kind of wobbling in the way that it did. You don't get these types of style of RPGs anymore, where they were balancing different stuff, because you have stuff like Kingdom Come Deliverance, of course, dominating. Expedition 33 came out and did really well, but you don't have the third person shooter mixing in with extremely driven narrative, and stuff like that anymore. Really, it doesn't feel like. That's why I'm so excited for the Owlcat game that they're doing, the Expanse game. I think that has the potential of hopefully capturing some of the missing magic left. And I know they've said that Mass Effect's on the horizon still. I'm skeptical that they're going to be able to pull it off. Unfortunately, I just, a lot of the people who made that series great are no longer there, and it is just BioWare in name, really, if we're being 100% honest. So hopefully we can get that as well, and we could just be spoiled. But yeah, that'll be the first name on the Mount Rushmore. All right, next up is going to be Hironobu Sakaguchi. And again, you've probably heard me sing his praises many, many times, being a massive, massive fan of his work. But yeah, just what an incredible, incredible person to have formulated basically what Final Fantasy was in his early days, kicking off his career. Which he was then the director of Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the first 5 entries of the series were under him in that way. And he started climbing up the ranks. So for 6, 7, and 9, he was more of a producer, in like an executive role for that. And then became an executive producer for 8, 10, 10, 2, and 11. So like he's left a massive, massive mark on Final Fantasy, helping to shape it in the early days and even the middle days, really. The golden age, in quotation marks, is what Square likes to call it for many of them titles that he was a part of. Obviously, then they had the little bit of a spat. I think a lot of it was sadly caused by the Spirits Within movie, which saw him depart Square. However, not all things have to end poorly, because he was then able to go and spread his creative wings and probably do things, because when you're doing stuff tied to an IP, even if it's something that you've helped build up and stuff like that, there's going to be certain things that they just won't let you do. So he was then able to step foot into his own team, forging his own studio with Mistwalker, and then going on to make legendary titles like Lost Odyssey, as you can see here running in the background, Blue Dragon. And then his most recent work, I believe, is Neo Dimension, Fantasian Neo Dimension. But of them three, I would say Lost Odyssey is by and far his greatest work. That's it. It genuinely stuns me that he was able to not only do that, but sadly have that shackled to the Xbox 360. And I'm very, very grateful it's on the Xbox 360. But for his success and exposure, which could have helped him stay at the very, very top of his game, in terms of the industry, because I don't think he lost any of his magic. It's just, if that was released on PS3, for example, I think he could have had a lot more of his feet in the door with many other big publishers and not feel like he's struggling to tread water at times, unfortunately. So yeah, but just an absolutely phenomenal creator. And I also wanted to shout this out. I don't think many people know he did obviously Blue Dragon and Lost Odyssey for the 360. He also had a cancelled project called Very Sad, I think. No, not Very Sad, sorry. Cryon. Which was a really cool... It was very, very early, so there's not all that much information on it, but it was obviously going to be propelled by his brilliant mind, and it was going to be paired up with a man called Kimihiko Fujisaka, who is one of the artists behind Drakengard. So like the concept art that is around, that you're able to go and Google and have a look at now, it just oozed like a lot of Nier vibes, as you would expect, and stuff like that, and Drakengard vibes, of course. And it would have been really, really cool to see how he would tackle something, because I don't think it was going to be turn-based. I think it was going to be real-time action. At least that's kind of what I was able to like scrape as like knowledge and stuff like that. Like it was going to be very more action-based, and that would have been a really cool thing to see how he would have handled that. And as always, you know, whenever he's gone to a new project, he seems to always bring people that he trusts. And with a lot of these games, he had the amazing composer, Nobuo Uematsu, who just knocks it out of the park. And it's kind of funny because I've put Hironobu Sakaguchi as my second, and I'm going to switch over to the next set of footage and you'll find out who that third person is. All right, so the third person, drum roll, it is Nobuo Uematsu. So picking up where we left off, just because these don't have to be people who have developed games on a gameplay level and stuff like that. These are just people who have been a part of creating any games in any way, shape, or form and have left a major impact on me. And those two, as a pairing, I think are my favorite two to have worked together. His music that he composes is, because I'm trying to think, like we've had incredible soundtracks, of course, but there's nobody that I feel has done it to the longevity that he has at the level that he has. Because you obviously have people who've come in and you've got the, I'm not going to do this justice because I don't know the person's name, but like the man who did Expedition 33's soundtrack was incredible. You obviously had an incredible soundtrack for the likes of Baldur's Gate 3, but I don't know, man. Like, he's done so many iconic songs, and I want to shout out one in particular, which immediately, whenever I think of him, it's just the one that immediately pops into my head, and that's Zanarkand from Final Fantasy X. And if you've had like any, even just brief passing with the game Final Fantasy X and like seen a clip or people talk about it and they use the footage and stuff, you've probably heard the song. It's so incredibly iconic. It's still, if I'm to play it, makes my hair stand on edge on like my arms, and still actually does draw a tear to my eye. It's so incredibly powerful. And then what I'll do as well is I'll link in the description down below, because he did work on Lost Odyssey, which is why I'm playing Lost Odyssey in the background. And two I wanted to point out, which spring to mind, but the entire soundtrack is phenomenal in Lost Odyssey. There isn't a dud on that soundtrack. But two that I just immediately think of is Never-Ending Journey and The Gun Barrel of Battle. Those both are just absolutely phenomenal. Just going to quickly take a drink. Makes it seem excuse me. Makes it seem like he's making me choke up. See, that's the amount of power he has. Just, yeah, second to none, in my opinion, on the ability to craft not only an impactful soundtrack, but one that just stands the test of time. His music is timeless, and it's so sad to know that as both him and Sakaguchi get older, like it's inevitable that there's going to be one day when they won't produce anything anymore, and that does really break my heart. But like I said, I'll have the entire soundtrack of Lost Odyssey plugged in the description below, so you can go and give it a listen. I'll also be plugging the persons whose gameplay I'm using for this, because I don't have any of that myself. I need to go back and grab some of that myself, because I do probably going to plan on talking about this game time and time and time again, so it would probably be wise to be using my own footage. But yep, that'll be plugged as well. And we shall close off, with the final name now. Right, so the final name is going to be Josh Sawyer, and I'm kind of very disappointed in myself, but it would have been a little bit annoying to go and have to dig pillars out. to get some footage on it, so I'm having to use Alpha Protocol instead. But if you know me, you know that I'm a massive Pillars of Eternity fan, and that's what Josh Sawyer has brought to my life, thankfully. Many others from Obsidian, of course, had a hand in it, but that's kind of like his baby almost. But just want to shout out his other work as well, because this is the thing, like, these are all great people at what they've done because of their catalog. It's not like he's come in and just dropped one game and then that's it. His contributions to gaming has been Icewind Dale 2, Neverwinter Nights 2. He had a smaller role for Alpha Protocol. That's why it's kind of annoying that I've had to use this as footage, because this is the only footage I have of any of these games. He had obviously a hand in Fallout New Vegas, and I believe all the DLCs as well. He was a part of Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2, and then Pentiment. So, an absolutely stellar catalogue of games there. Just phenomenal output from him. And yeah, I still, like, Wrath of the Righteous is probably my favorite as a complete whole package CRPG, from like gameplay and story. But like, for me, I just couldn't get enough of Pillars of Eternity. It's what made me stumble upon one of my favorite YouTubers of all time, being Multismal Gaming. He did tons of lore for both that and Divinity. I remember just sitting there for hours just listening to his breakdowns of characters, places, and stuff like that. And just being in that world and just feeling like that. It kind of tapped into that same feeling of what I've had and many others have had with like Dark Souls and stuff like that. When people have done Dark Souls lore, like Vati video, and then you end up going into the game yourself and you're able to, something that you may have glossed over or not like picked out yourself, maybe you've ignored a certain aspect of it, and it allows you to appreciate the art and the craft so much more. And that's definitely what I ended up feeling with Pillars of Eternity. It saddens me that it didn't really. It was one of the most successful Kickstarted projects of all time. Definitely up there, but like commercially and stuff like that, it definitely seemed to struggle, especially on the console side. Being a CRPG, they've had very steep uphill climbing and really difficult to try and break into that market, with it being so different to what people are usually used to on consoles, with stuff that comes naturally to them, with like Skyrim, Oblivion, and stuff like that. But yeah, it's my duty to remind people to check out Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2. So be sure to make sure to check that out. But yeah, that is it. That is the 4 people that I feel have most impacted me. You obviously have stuff like, this is what I mean, there's so many other people I could have picked potentially. You know, you have the likes of Hideo Kojima, of course, but a lot of Kojima's early work I didn't play at the time, so it's one of them things where it's second-hand appreciation when you hear about people who would have. It must have been so incredible to be there for like the launch of Metal Gear Solid 2 and have that be entirely experienced by yourself in a vacuum, rather than somebody telling you 10 years later, 15 years later on a YouTube video how amazing it is. So it's probably why he didn't muscle his way in, unfortunately. But yep, that'll be it. Another short video, hopefully. Just coming in under 20 minutes, but it will be 20 minutes more when the outro is done. So yeah, if you've somehow stumbled upon here before Brandon's channel, make sure to check his channel out in the description below. He does amazing solo stuff, and we occasionally collab. And if you want to join a Discord with like-minded gamers such as yourself, make sure to pop a comment down below, and I'll hit you back with the link. Definitely, like, if it's something that you've been meaning to do, definitely get on it, because we've got a really cool event for next month with spring cleaning, which is going to be tackling, by the looks of it, because we do the polls as to how we want to structure it, and it looks like it's going to be games from 10 plus years ago. So there's going to be a ton of great classic titles people are going to be playing and cataloging in their clear list. So if that sounds interesting, be sure to drop a comment down below about wanting to join the Discord, and I'll hit you back with the link. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and hopefully see you in the next one.